Hello everyone and welcome to the Constructive Criticism Network. This network is here to help you improve at Magic the Gathering at every level. From Pauper Leagues to Top 1000 Mythic, we've got you covered. If you want to hear the entire network, head on over to our sponsor at PureMTGO.com, where you can hear each and every show, each and every week, and check out their sponsor, MTGO Traders, and tell them that the CCMTG Network sent you. Now sit back, enjoy the show. From YouTube, podcasts, and more, here's this week's episode from ConstructiveCriticism.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 149 of the Common Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm joined by our Neon Dynasty co-host, Brad.
Yo, yo, yo. What's up, brother?
Much, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. It's been a while for me to be excited about a standard set, but here I am. I can't sit still.
That's what I'm saying. Before we get to... Oh, I'm doing great. I can't sit still as well. I got, the McDonald's Coke next to me. McDonald's Coke is by far the best Coke you'll drink.
Best fountain Coke in the world.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, I don't mean it's the best soda, right? Because
it's the best fountain soda. The best fountain Coke.
Absolutely. Because the best soda is Berry Dr. Pepper from when Avengers Infinity War was out. Yeah. But before we get too far into this episode, I just want to remind everyone that Common Knowledge and all of the podcasts on the Constructive Criticism Network are sponsored by PureMTGO.com. If you wanted to support the show, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel and check out the Common Knowledge Patreon. That out of the way, let's get on with the podcast for the week.
Woohoo! New cards.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got a bunch of them, too.
Yeah. But before we got into the new cards, have you been playing any new decks in Pauper?
New decks? No. I've revisited a couple just to get some reps in on MTGO. I would fire up, mono black rogues, burn a little bit, nothing too super competitive, just to kind of knock the ring rust off, if you will. But outside of that, just kind of working on my paper decks, updating those post-ban. I finally got my pieces in for Tron and Black-White Pestilence to replace the banned cards. And that's about it. I think I'm going to play some paper Magic tomorrow night while I'm out of town for work. Probably apparently 3 different formats, 2 of which I rarely, if ever, play. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, man, do you have any decks that you're excited to play tomorrow night?
Well, if I do sign up for the Pioneer event, I'm going to play my Rock Solid Challenger deck. I bought the Black-White Auras one. I'm looking forward to playing that. I don't have anybody locally that plays Pioneer, so I just pretty much bought it just to have it, so I haven't actually cracked it open. I mean, I've sleeved it up, but I haven't played it or anything. Mm-hmm. And then one of the buddies that I'm going to play with, he said he's going to bring a bunch of EDH decks. I have 2 pre-cons sleeved up, boxed up, ready to go, but I'll see what he has. Maybe play some of those as well. And then I'm going to take one of my cases of decks, I guess, and just sort of load it with a good selection of power and tier decks and combo decks, that sort of thing. And if they want to dive into that, we can get something going too.
Yeah, man. That sounds like it'll be a great time.
Yeah, it should be.
For me, I've been just playing Teamer this past week.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of burn as well, but nothing too heavy. Like, I haven't jumped into a league or anything. I still think that deck's fun. I think the affinity matchup is pretty good. And I think the fairies matchup, blue-black, I think is just okay. But blue-red, I think, is a pretty good, somewhere between pretty good and really good matchup for the deck. I've been seeing those. Yeah, for Teamer. I've been seeing those 3 decks a lot in leagues recently, along with walls and elves and stuff. And I think a lot of those matchups, against elves, you have the key pieces removal, you're about as fast as them. The land destruction is not very good versus walls or elves. But that's okay.
Yeah, after turn 2, they don't need their basic lands anyway.
Yeah, well, they also can bounce whatever forest you target, which is just it's okay because, kind of play that transformational sideboard where you're not really wanting to play Packmate against either of those 2 decks, but it is better than Thermokarst and Acid Moss. But yeah, I think the deck has a pretty good matchup spread. It's a lot of fun to play. It's pretty intuitive as far as, if you've never played the deck before, you can pick it up pretty quickly and at least notice the basic play patterns and then kind of learn the nuance from there.
I don't remember. I haven't looked at the actual list in a while. Does it have any sweepers in it, main board, sideboard, or is it all like spot removal, targeted removal?
I play like somewhere between 2 and 3, depending on whatever league I'm in. A fiery cannonade. I think that's pretty standard. A lot of people I think that aren't playing like if you're not playing a land destruction package and you're foregoing Arbor Elves, they might play some in the main deck as well. But it's not fun to remove your own Llanowar Visionaries and Arbor Elves with
Right.
your fiery cannonade. Like those cards kind of switch up what the deck is doing, which in a lot of cases, that's fine because there are some matchups where you do just want to take like that very controlling stance.
Right.
And, if you play those cards, and then, like, I play, like, Ardent Elementalist on the sideboard as well, along with those and Pulsa Marasa. So, you
Such
can
a
kind
good
of,
card.
yeah, you can get this really interesting loop going where, you Fiery Cannonade, play your Ardent Elementalist, Fiery Cannonade again, Pulsa Marasa it back, and then you can play it again and get back Fiery Cannonade for a third time, or Pulsa Marasa to get a Cascader.
Yeah, you just
it
locking
makes
it
a
up at that
yeah.
point.
Yeah, it has really interesting loops that sound like you're jumping through a bunch of hoops, but you're not really. It doesn't play that way. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
tons of fun.
Nice. I want to get on board the team or train. I think might be one of the next decks I fire up. Perhaps a deck of the month.
Do it. It'll be fun.
Should. Yeah.
I guess just other things to kind of say before we got into the show's main topic. You mentioned the deck of the month. Kind of going forward, we were talking about what we wanted the show to get back to. So over the next couple of months, we're really going to go back to the basics. We're going to have a challenge episode, league episode, probably once every 4 weeks, go over challenge results, and like really nail them down, do power rankings. We're going to be choosing one deck for both of us to play, whether that be, for 2 weeks or a month at a time. That sort of deal. Really just go back to the roots of how we started, I guess, and kind of see what kind of discovery we can do for the rest of the year within the format.
Yeah, I think so. I think that'll be a good rails to be back on, if you will. I know I tend to get derailed quite a bit with my brewing machinations and my lack of focus sometimes, and I think that's brought us into different areas with the episodes, with the show, different topics, different guests, that sort of thing. And all that fun stuff's not necessarily going to go away. We'll still do brewing episodes, and we'll still do guests and big Q&As and all that kind of stuff. But I think, like you said, we just sort of talked about it, and we want to put a finer point on the messages and the information, the content we're trying to deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoy learning about the brewing side of Pauper, especially from you. So that's definitely not going away. It's just when we do it, it'll be more pointed. So,
Right.
Instead of talking about brews mid-episode, we'll dedicate an episode to brewing like a particular archetype or talking about an archetype that we have brewed.
Right,
Maybe
exactly.
once every other month, the deck of the month won't be a meta deck. It'll be like us actively working on a brew, and then we can do like an end of the month episode on that deck.
Yeah, and we'll try not to do for these deck of the months. Obviously, we'll try not to play the same deck. Both of us play the same deck for the month. I think the final results show on that would be a little boring, but yeah, should be a good time.
All that being said, I think we should probably go ahead and jump into the main topic because it's a doozy.
It is a doozy. It's a neon doozy. Going back to Kamigawa, were you born yet when original Kamigawa came out?
What year was that?
I don't remember. I'd have to look it up. Hold on.
Google it right now. I assume I was.
What was the first set of the block? Well, either way, Champions of Kamigawa came out in 2004.
Oh yeah, I was 4 years old, baby. It's
See,
fun.
Just like that, I derailed us. We didn't even get to the main topic.
Fun pointing stuff like that out, I guess, because I feel like I've been playing Magic forever, and it's somewhat true because I've been playing Magic my entire adult life, but I'm still at the point where my non-adult life vastly outweighs my adult life in terms of just sheer time.
Just numbers.
Yep, exactly. So, format that we're going to do for this set review is going to be kind of a mixture of the two things that we've done in the past. We're not going to go through each and every card. Just, I think we both agree that kind of feels like a slog at times.
Like we talked about, it doesn't give a fair shake to some of the cards at the end. If we try to do every single card, we come out of the gates, talking about white cards and all excited and blue cards and this and that. By the time we get to green and artifacts, it's just like we just want to be dead. We just want the show to be over and the cards to have finished.
And then, we also tried doing maybe like 2 top 10s in general, or even like a collective like top 15, just so we can hit all the cards that we think are slam dunks and then maybe like fringe playable. But the issue with this set is I think that there are a few slam dunks and a lot of cards that are fringe playable.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of met somewhere in between, and for most of the colors, we each did our own, top 5 or 6 that we'll talk about. And there's some overlap there.
Yeah.
So some colors, we'll talk about probably like 6 or 7 cards in total, and other colors, it could be up to 10 or 11.
I think that's probably the most productive, efficient way to do it.
So starting us off, as usual, we always go in Wooburg order.
Wooburg.
Do you want to kick us off with white? And
yeah, I actually have this card in my. It's actually the first card in the set review, but it's also first card on my list for white. It is Ancestral Katana for a colorless and a white. It's an artifact equipment. Whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, you may pay 1 generic. When you do, attach Ancestral Katana to it. Equipped creature gets +2/+1, and then it has a normal equip cost of 3. I pretty much glazed over this card the first couple times I sort of strolled through the cards here until I realized that I'm still hooked on this Champion of the Flame heroic brew that I'm trying to work on. It's like a Boros Champion of the Flame deal, and this fits right in. He's a warrior. It's a combat trick. You automatically, because he gets +2/+2 for each aura and equipment. So if you pop this on him during combat, he gets +4/+3 and trample, because he already has trample. So if it didn't have the samurai or warrior clause on it, this would not be on my list at all.
Heck yeah,
So this is strictly just a brewable card for me.
Yeah, until you said that, I had no idea of this card's application in that manner. Yep. I want it to be good now.
Yeah, that's how I was. I looked at it 3 or 4 times, and it was finally tonight that I saw it. I'm like, oh, warrior, okay. And warrior is a relevant party type, but that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Well, what you got, sir?
Yeah, so my number 1 was a little card called Era of Enlightenment. For the first time ever, we're getting common sagas. I think this is the one I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I agree.
Because of the kind of person I am. So it's 2 mana, cost a white and 1 for an Enchantment Saga. The first chapter on it is you scry 2 cards. I think
not
that
bad for white.
Yeah. Number 2, you gain 2 life. So far, we're at a very white effect.
Yes.
And then for the third chapter, you'll exile it and basically transform it, return it to the battlefield transformed as a 2/2 human monk with first strike. I don't expect any of the sagas to blow the format out of the water, but
right.
I am excited by any 2 mana card that does 3 things. 3 unique things, I think is something worth keeping its eye on in our format.
And it's a relevant card type. Enchantments can be a big deal in our format.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure exactly how good this is going to be, but I think all of the sagas in the format are going to be, potential game changers, just because it's the first time we've had the card type.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that we have sagas at common. We'll see where it leads to, but it's cool. We have access to them now. We're not just looking up the rarity ladder at them.
Right. Yeah.
So
what'd you have at number 2?
Number 2, I also had Era of Enlightenment. I'm trying to go in alphabetical order with mine. So I'll skip on to the next one. That would be Light the Way. A single white mana for an instant. Sort of a modal card. You get to choose one. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or vehicle, and then you untap it. Or you can return target permanent you control to its owner's hand. So this does a lot of stuff. I don't know. I would definitely have to test it to see if it's a main deckable or if it's a sideboard card or where it actually fits. But anything in white for cheap that actually targets a creature, I'm all over it for heroic for sure. And then there's got to be some kind of shenanigans for bouncing Skyfisher or whatever, So there's got to be something going on here. I just don't know how good it's going to be.
Right. Every set review, we kind of have a card that we're like, yep, this is the card. It's going to do it for heroic.
Yeah. Heroic tier 1, baby, right here.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's kind of funny, I guess, just because like the heroic decks now just have so many different options.
Yeah,
That
they're
it's like,
almost toolboxy.
yeah, I think if four different people were to build four different heroic decks, we would have four different 1 mana cards that put a +1/+1 counter on target creature and do something else,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and they would all be defensible.
Yeah, they would both show up in the 5-0 list because they would be that different from one another.
Exactly. My second card was just another saga. I should have done what you did and put them in alphabetical order, but my biases are showing.
Yeah, that's all right.
This one was Befriending the Moths. 4 mana. First 2 chapters, your target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains flying until end of turn. And then number 3 is you're going to exile it, then return to the battlefield transformed. You'll get just a 2/4 Imperial Moth flying insect. I don't think that this one is as good as some of the other cards on my list. But again, I'm kind of just giving all the sagas the benefit of the doubt. I think in like the more mid-rangey white decks, with some of the other cards I'm going to talk about, Priest, the one that gains a life, draws a card, I think that this could slot in nicely there. It's just like a beat down white deck instead of like a white go under sort of strategy.
Sure. I like it. I don't like it, like you said, as well as the first one, but I do like it. Real quick, yes or no question so we don't get too far off topic. Because all these sagas we have, when it hits the 3rd chapter, they exile, come back as a creature. Would we be more than medium on them if the 3rd chapter did something and then exiled? You know what I'm saying? Like had an additional thing before the exile come back as a creature?
Yeah, I would. Obviously,
that would be too much.
It could potentially be too much, right? Like, I'm fine with them coming in transformed as creatures without a 3rd effect. I just wish that maybe like one of the first 2 effects were a little bit better, or the creature. But it's also like you just also have to think of like a draft format of like, do you want like a 3 mana saga that the 2nd effect is like return target creature from the graveyard to the battlefield, and the 3rd effect is like make a creature. It's like, you probably don't want that in your draft format,
Right. Moving on here, my number 3 in white is Regents Authority. It's another single white mana card for an instant. Another target creature heroic card. Target creature gets +2/+2 until the end of turn. If it's an enchantment creature or a legendary creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it gets +1/+1 until the end of turn. So I like it. Targets creature, put some counters on it possibly. It at least gives it +2/+2. There's not much more to say about that.
Yeah, you said
Pretty
everything
straightforward.
that I thought about it.
Yeah.
Hopefully one of these 2 cards finds a way in heroic.
The Regents Authority is probably worth testing more so than Light the Way, but I think they're both raring to go.
For my next card in white, probably one of my favorite cards just in the entire set, Spirited Companion. Just another white Elvish Visionary. It costs a white and 1. It's a 1/1 enchantment creature dog. Whenever Spirited Companion enters the battlefield, draw a card. I think just the, 2 mana cantrip, have a body. I think that effect is pretty powerful. There are no like elf synergies with this, of course, which also adds the power of Elvish Visionary. Mm-hmm. But again, I think in like a medium white deck,
sure,
this would be
good.
If
you had a way to bounce it, I mean, even Light of the Way lets you return it to your hand. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's pretty easy to get it back in your hand if you want to recast it, flicker it, whatever.
There we go. It's all coming together.
It is all
standard pauper people. This is for you. Light the Way and Spirited Companion.
We're breaking the meta. That was also my number 5. I love it. It's a good card, good boy, good doggy.
I guess I'll just speak on my one that's left. I also had Light the Way, which we already talked about, but I also had a card called Lucky Offering. Lucky Offering is a 1 mana sorcery, just costs white straight up. Destroy target artifact with mana value 3 or less. You gain 3 life. I don't think this is going to replace any of the disenchant effects in Pauper, but you never know. Like maybe a mono white deck plays this for the life gain as well.
I don't see why not. I mean, I almost put that in my top 5, but I like it. I'm not sure if it's better or worse than say like a Fragmentize or any of the other 1 mana artifact / enchantment hate we have, but just like the other ones on my list, it's worth a shot. It might be brewable, it might be good. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, so that's what we have for white. What did you think of white overall?
I feel like white, at least at the common level, seems pretty basic. It's very on theme for the set. Enchantment creatures, it talks about samurais and warriors, samurai tokens even. There's a spell that puts them into play. It's got the sagas and all this stuff going for it. The artwork is just amazing. But like if you didn't show me the set symbol and you just showed me these cards in a vacuum, I would assume they were for a standard set.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're very standard power level for commons, I think, which is fine.
Absolutely. I pretty much agree. White to me, like a lot of the sets I think we see is more of like, here's some playable cards, and a lot of them are very like toolboxy, not in like the traditional sense of like you're going to play one of all these cards in your white decks
Right.
and tutor them out, but like specific meta games, you would play Light the Way, and other ones you would play Regents Authority. That's kind of like been a trend, I think, that we've seen from standard legal sets out of white, at least at the common level.
Yeah. Like one that wasn't on either of our lists that kind of sums it up is that Golden Tail Disciple. It's an enchantment creature, Fox Monk, for 2 and a white. It's a 2/3 with lifelink. Like it's just, there's no mayo. It's just a straight up sandwich, just a ham sandwich.
Right. Moving on to our next color, blue.
Mm-hmm.
Leading on what might be a contender for my favorite card in this set.
All right.
Mirror Shell Crab.
Yeah, this one has people talking.
Yeah, so it costs 2 blue and 5 for a 5/7 with Ward 3. But you can also pay a blue and 2 and discard it and counter target spell or ability unless its controller pays 3 mana.
That's huge. And it's also an artifact.
Yeah, so it's an uncounterable mana leak for 3 mana on a 5/7 body that has disruption on it with the ward ability. I like this in Tron. I like this potentially in blue black reanimator. I like it in Cycle Storm. Yeah, I like it in a lot of different decks. I think it's
and that's
very good.
It's not just you can channel it to counter a spell, but you can also knock off any sort of ability too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like was that stifle, like a stifle effect?
Yeah, and it's also interesting because the only way that I know of in Pauper to counter this card that's like gonna see play is this card.
Yeah.
Like, because it's not a spell. Like, I'm sure stifle effects exist, but I can't think of any other ones that would see play. So what that means is like your opponent is going to activate, some ability of some creature. Like, I don't know. I guess like if you're taking a ninja hit and you have Exhume in your hand, you're like, oh, well, I'm gonna stifle your draw card, and then I'm gonna untap and Exhume this guy, and you can't
can't do anything about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, unless you want to pay, 7 for that snuff out, or 5 for that cast down, or 4 for a light, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, I love the ward mechanic. I love that it's almost hex proof, but it's like a more fair hex proof.
Yep.
I think it was a really cool new mechanic from last year.
Yeah, that was my first card in blue. What about yourself?
This was very unlike me, but the first one I chose from blue is actually a counter spell, possibly counter spells 5 through 8 if you're so inclined. It's Disruption Protocol for 2 blue. It's an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, tap an untapped artifact you control or pay 1. So it's a cancel if you don't tap an artifact, and you just counter target spell. So basically, if you're in, say, blue-black and you're running the Blood Fountains, you've got 8 counter spells.
Yep.
Just straight up. Or blue-white, you can tap your clues, anything like that.
Yeah, I think that this card's pretty good. I'm glad that this doesn't say artifact or creature. I think in the past we would have seen this card say artifact or creature.
Yep.
But it doesn't.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that.
Up next, I had maybe the most talked about card in the set.
Yep, that was next on my list as well.
Yeah, Moon Circuit Hacker. It's a 2-mana 2/1 with ninjutsu for a single blue. Whenever a Moon Circuit Hacker deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card, unless Moon Circuit Hacker enter the battlefield this turn.
That is so strong.
Yeah, this card's really good.
Yeah, it is really good, and it's not hard to get it back in your hand. I mean,
Yeah, but even like I'm not even concerned with really getting it back into your hand, I guess, because it's like to me, whenever I think about it, the first just raw card advantage is good. But in the later stages of the game, if this card is still hitting, like it's not going to be anything to, discard an excess land. You're going to have
Yeah.
this go in with the other ninja. Now, the only downside that I can think of this card is I think it's going to see play in a lot of the fairy decks. I think,
Mhm.
we'll see somewhere between 6 to 8 ninjas in all those decks going forward.
Yep. Easily. Yep. I
Yeah.
agree.
I think this makes mono black decks kind of more homogenized, and that might be a way to hate this card out. Is the mono black deck that won the challenge a couple of weeks ago was playing, I think, 4 suffocating fumes. Or
Yep.
I don't think it won the challenge. Did it win the
The prelim, I think.
Yeah, the prelim.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was playing
some special event.
Yeah, it was playing 4 suffocating fumes main deck. That was probably to target fairies because it kills all their fairies in play, and
Right.
it would also kill this. So that might be some counterplay to this card. But overall, I still think this card is very powerful.
It is very powerful. It was powerful enough to where, like, 30 seconds after it was spoiled, Gavin was on Twitter kind of bragging about the card, but also saying, I know, it's strong. The PFP is already watching it.
Yeah, which, is something that I guess Pauper is very lucky to have, just some sort of acknowledgement like, hey, this card is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is. It's really good. That was also on my list.
I guess that was next on your list. What did you have at number 3?
Number 3, this is my first Enchantment Saga to spoil, The Modern Age. For a colorless and a blue, you get an Enchantment Saga. The first 2 chapters are the same. You draw a card and then discard a card. Chapter 3, exile this saga, then return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. And on the back is a 2/3 flying enchantment creature spirit. This is probably the better of the sagas we've talked about so far.
I would say so. I would say that pretty much all the 2-mana sagas are of a somewhat similar power level. But this one, it doesn't just scry, it actually filters your cards for you, gets you closer to the cards you want to be playing. It flips into a nice, aggressive body with evasion. What this card reminds me of, there's actually a few cards in this set that remind me of it, is the old deck that would play like Phantasmal Bear or whatever it was called. Like mono blue Stompy, if you will.
Yep.
I think I think this card would fit nice into like a mono blue Stompy deck.
Yeah, I can totally see that. But yeah, all the sagas are just straightforward. They're clean. There's not a lot of like complexity to them, and I think that's sort of their draw. I like them for that reason.
I also had the Modern Age on my list. So up next, I had Moon Snare Prototype. If you don't know what Moon Snare Prototype does yet, I'm sorry that I have to be the one to tell you. It costs a single blue for an artifact. You tap it, and you tap an untapped artifact or creature you control to add not any color, a colorless mana to your mana pool. Then it has Channel. You pay a blue and 4 and discard it. The owner of target non-land permanent puts it on the top or bottom of their library. I don't know how much this card is going to be played. We have a lot of really good 1-mana artifacts that do stuff these days in Pauper. I think that 1-mana artifact that ramps you and also has a removal / like sort of like tempo ability on it is at least down to be playable. Especially in Grixis Affinity, you might see this as like a 1 or a 2 of. I think what might hold this card back from being played ultimately, though, is the fact that it's not removal or a nice tempo play. It's the worst of those 2 options, always, because your opponent gets to pick. You don't.
Yeah. I'm not used to playing the type of decks that this would fit in naturally. Like, to me, it doesn't seem like it goes right in an aggro list. I'm sure Affinity will try it out. But yeah, I like these kind of creatures. It's like almost like a Jasper or Sentinel, but for blue, but for artifacts, that sort of thing. And I guess I just now realized that I assumed this was a creature when it was first spoiled. It is just an artifact.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was an artifact creature based on the art and everything else.
Yeah, I did too.
But cool. Yeah, I like it. Number 5 on my list is Planar Incision. For a generic and a blue, you get an instant that says exile target artifact or creature Then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. This is kind of like Teferi's Time Twist. Seems like every other standard set or so, we get these flicker, half flicker sort of abilities. And I'm always willing to try out new ones. And this one brings it back in a little buffed with that counter on it. So I'm willing to try it out. It seems like it'll fit in quite a few. I don't know. I don't want to say it's already got a home. I think you're going to need to brew with this more than anything. Maybe it's going to have to be some sort of flicker deck or value deck, some sort of creature ETB deck that you're going to want to play it in. But yeah, I like these kind of effects. I think they're really good in cubes. It's probably awesome in draft, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm somewhat excited about this card. I think this one has potential to see play, especially down the road in Pauper. If, Ghostly Flicker and or Ephemerate, ever do get the axe, I would see this card kind of being one of the first ones tried out in their place. I think it's good enough to stand on its own as well, though, particularly because it does buff the cards.
And perhaps I'm reading it wrong or reading too far into it. If I take out the same card, this Planar Incision, if I take out the words or creature, it says exile target artifact and return it to the battlefield under your control with a +1/+1 counter on it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just going to have an artifact with a +1/+1 counter on it?
Yeah, so it has a lot to do with the vehicle synergies in the set, right? Where vehicles aren't creatures unless they're crewed. But this allows you to have your vehicle sitting with a +1/+1 counter on it, and then you can decide to crew it later.
I gotcha.
But
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it'll still work that way with other artifacts, but the reason it is that way
because of the vehicles.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
You're smart. That's like the second rules question you've answered for me today, sir. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, speaking of the mono blue Stompy decks, a card I was very excited about that made me want to play those decks is Armguard Familiar. For a blue and 1, you get a 2/1 with Ward 2. It's just that, but you can reconfigure it, which is a new mechanic. You pay a certain amount of mana, in this case it's 4, attach this to target creature you control, or unattach it from a creature if it is attached. Reconfigure only as a sorcery. When attached, it isn't a creature. If you do turn it into that equipment, quick creature gets +2/+1 and has Ward 2. So I like this in those sort of beatdown style decks because, it's just a bear on its own with some sort of evasion. Or not really evasion, just dodges removal in a way. And then later on, you can start to form your super creature that still dodges removal.
The reconfigure's a little awkward, but I like it. It's similar to Equip, but I think they had to reword it because they're all creatures. Like this one's an artifact, creature, equipment, beast, which is all that about fit on that type line. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I think the reconfigure is an interesting sort of space to go into. I'm a big fan of equipment as it is, so I think reconfigure 4 might be a little steep, but you are getting that Ward 2 as well as the buff, so it may be worth it.
Yeah, you just want to jump right into black?
Yeah, sure. No problem. I can start this one off here. First black on my list is Debt to the Kami. For 2 generic and a black, you get an instant. Choose one. It's another modal type card. Target opponent exiles a creature they control, or target opponent exiles an enchantment they control. I'm not so much worried about the enchantment part of it. I like the exile a creature. I don't think this card's going to see a ton of play in our format, but it is the same mana cost, if not easier to cast than, say, like an Unmake, which also exiles a card. But at least with Unmake, you get to choose which one it is. This one, it's sort of like a Diabolic Edict that actually exiles it instead of it just going to the graveyard. But I like its modal ability. If it turns out that some of these sagas are a problem, we may, this may be an answer to that. I definitely think it's an answer for like the limited format, for a lot of these enchantments running around. But you have any thoughts on this particular card?
Yeah. I'm not super high on it. Like you said, my immediate application that I thought of was if the sagas end up being too good just because they're sagas. This is going to be able to see play in all the black decks specifically to answer the sagas.
And like you were saying earlier too, if mono black ends up coming back in a big way, now we've got I think this is our third, maybe fourth option for black to destroy an enchantment.
Exactly. I really like the art, though.
Yeah.
I think last week actually talked about the movie The Ring, if I remember.
Did we?
Maybe we didn't. Maybe I was just talking about it with somebody else and mistook it for us talking before the podcast. but I'm pretty sure like one of us mentioned it, and it's like something about the artwork reminds me of that movie, like from afar.
Yeah, it is very gangly, like greasy, wet, straight black hair, and yeah, coming for.
My first card was Reckoner's Bargain. I'm very excited for this card in
Yes.
the way that I'm not excited for it at all. It's a black and 1 instant. Tell me if you've heard this before. As an additional
Right.
cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature.
Ugh.
You gain life equal to the sacrifice permanent's mana value. Draw 2 cards. So it's kind of got a Deadly Dispute thing going on. It doesn't give you a mana back, which I think is good. This might be Deadly Dispute like 5 and 6, but the life gain is going to be big against decks like
huge.
Burn.
Yep.
The first Burn player that casts Lightning Bolt, and sacrifices 2 lands to finish them off. Then their opponent goes 2 mana, gain 7. It's gonna
I'm gonna sacrifice this Mirror Enforcer.
Yeah,
and your game is over.
Yeah, it's gonna be terrible.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah, I think this card's really good. It's good enough to see play in pretty much all aristocrat style decks, and even in Affinity, and anywhere from 2 to 4, I would say.
Yep. You could Reckoner's Bargain and Evoked Muldrifter and draw a whole bunch of cards and gain some life. Whatever you want to do. It's crazy. It's an instant too, which is huge. I like it a lot. I think it's going to see probably way more sideboard play. Unless it is an Aristocrats deck, then maybe 1 or 2 in the main deck won't hurt either. Up next, I think, is my first creature in black, I believe. Anyway, it's Kami of Terrible Secrets. For 3 and a black, you get a creature spirit, a 3/4 creature spirit. When Kami of Terrible Secrets enters the battlefield, if you control an artifact and an enchantment, you draw a card and you gain 1 life. We see this sort of effects quite often on various creatures of varying power and toughness and casting costs, but usually it's a draw a card and you lose a life. This is draw a card and you gain a life, so really you've got you can curve out really with like Dusk Legion Zealot at 2, Phyrexian Rager at 3, this at 4, and they've all drawn you cards. It's probably not the best game plan, but it is sort of in that same line of semi-value black creatures. So I'm always a fan of that.
Yeah.
I wish it had maybe 1 more black pip, then I would consider it in a Gary deck, but it's still not bad.
Yeah, I wish this card said artifact or an enchantment.
Right.
I would be much more excited about it, if you just needed one or the other.
Yeah, I think that line right there is pretty much going to relegate it to like mono black control, where you have, I don't know, Nihil Spellbomb and Oubliette, or Vault Scourge and Pestilence, or you know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah, I can see where this card will see play. I think the thing that'll hold it back in the long run is the fact that sometimes it's just hard to build those board states. Up next, in black, I had You Are Already Dead.
Yes.
For a black, you destroy a target creature that was dealt damage this turn and draw a card. Normally, I don't like effects like this. The fact that, it's just a 1 mana removal spell, it replaces itself, I think is going to make it contend, especially in those black decks that are very low to the ground, like mono black zombies, for example, right? Mm-hmm. Where you're fine, your creatures are going to be in combat a lot.
Right.
Kind of trading. If your opponent ever gets to the point where they can start playing their bigger creatures, this is a removal spell that doesn't interfere with your main game plan because it's going to replace itself and is cheap, so you can still utilize your mana in other ways.
Yeah, I don't think it's busted or anything like that, but I think it's better than a lot of people have given it credit for. Like you said, we have effects like this already that destroy target creature that was dealt damage this turn, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think any of them draw a card, and I don't know that any of them are just a single black mana to cast them. So, yep, it definitely shoots it up the list. I like it. If you wanted to get silly, you could just be like, I'm going to gut shot your Angler and then kill it with this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just silly stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good one. I like it. My next one, my third on the list is, if I can pronounce it, Mukotai Ambusher. I think that's how you say it. For 3 and a black, you get a 3/2 artifact creature Rat Ninja. I repeat, Rat Ninja. That's awesome. And it has ninjutsu for 1 and a black. and lifelink. I was so prepared to like read extra text after ninjutsu because they all seem to have an ability, but it doesn't. It just has lifelink. You can ninja it in for 1 and a black and lifelink. I love it. I think the lifelink could be huge because it feels like whenever you play a creature in Pauper with power 2 or less that has lifelink, it's very underwhelming. But when you get 3, 4, 5, that's when it starts to get pretty crippling for the opponent, I feel like. Like once you're out of lightning bolt range with lifelink, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, I like this card a lot as well. I don't think it's as good as some other ninjas in our format.
Right. Yeah.
But, kind of like the last card, You Are Already Dead, that we were talking about, I think this one has a home in those like mono black aggro decks, which is very exciting to me. It's been a while since those decks have gotten some pretty good new cards, I think.
Yeah. I'm thinking stuff too, like turn 1, Changeling Outcast, turn 2, attack with Changeling Outcast because it can't be blocked, ninjutsu this in, and you're just off to the races.
So up next, I have Okiba Reckoner Raid. It's another saga for a single black. You get Enchantment Saga, the first 2 chapters. Each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Then the third chapter is you get a 2/2 with Menace, and vehicles you control have Menace. If Orzhov Vehicles becomes a deck, this card's going to be good. Yeah, because you'll play this, right? And then your next couple of turns, you can actually develop your vehicles. And then you don't have to take an extra turn to develop something to crew them, because that's what you did on turn 1. So that's why I think this card is good. Also, you got the little rat man there wearing his, jacket that looks like it's out of, like Fast and Furious or Cyberpunk or whatever.
Yep. Yeah. He's got a neon rat on his jacket.
Yeah, awesome. Exactly.
Next up, I think I had like 6 or 7 on my original list for black, but we've mentioned a couple of them were on your list, etc. So I think the last one I have is Virus Beetle. It's an artifact creature insect for a colorless and a black. It's a 1/1, but when it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. Plain and simple. I like these kind of effects. Usually they're on some sort of rat. That's what they are in Pauper generally. But, any sort of, unearth. You can unearth it, get them for 2, discard. You can flicker it, you can ephemerate it, whatever you want to do. Just get silly with it. I'm all about hand destruction, disruption, that sort of thing. So that's all I got. It's fun. It looks fun. It's an artifact creature if that matters to your synergy.
I think that this card's, it's nice. I like it. This is an effect that's been in Pauper for a while, and I think the effect is always more likely to be played than it is not likely to be played. So yeah, I think it's a good card. Last on my list was Clawing Torment. Another card with awesome art.
Yeah, very awesome.
Single black for an enchantment aura. You enchant artifact or creature. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it gets -1/-1 and can't block. And enchanted permanent has, at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life. There's a card that this reminds me of. It reminds me of 2 mana, enchantment, and burn. The name is escaping me right now. It's the Curse.
Curse of the Pierced Heart?
Yes, Curse of the Pierced Heart. I think artifact lands are so prevalent in Pauper with wildfire decks, and Affinity, and even Blue-Black Fae plays them sometimes.
Sure.
That this is going to do a nice Curse of the Pierced Heart impression against those decks. And it also has the upside of being able to kill like a spell stutter sprite so they can't ninja it back. So on and so forth.
Or the new ninja moon mist busted deep hours.
Exactly.
Yep. I am surprised that you don't normally pick black enchantments that make your opponent just straight up lose life. I'm impressed. I like it.
Yeah, well, this one, it's a combination of it being so cheap and the exact metagame we exist in.
That's a good call.
There's some counterplay to this, though, that is, you put this on my artifact land? Deadly Dispute. That I think might end up holding it back in the long run.
Well, I think that's okay, too. I mean, yeah, I don't really want my opponent ever casting a Deadly Dispute, but if they sacrifice a land to do so, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with setting them back a land. They get a treasure token, so what?
Yeah, fair enough.
That card's not that good anyway. It's fine.
Right. Deadly Dispute is so not good that we're talking that there might be a card that does it, but a little bit better, and Reckoner's Bargain.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Only like the very next set.
Right. So that's it for black for us. I guess we'll just keep it rolling on into red.
We will.
So my first red card, I was relatively excited about it. It's called Explosive Entry. 2 mana. Destroy up to 1 target artifact. And you put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. The reason I'm excited about this, there's an abundance of artifact hate in our format. I don't know how much better this is than like Ancient Grudge or something like that. But I like this particularly in the red-green or Teamer or Jun mid-range decks, as you'll get to destroy one of their artifacts, but you also get to put a +1/+1 counter on one of your mid-rangey creatures that maybe help it trade better with like a Gear Seeker Serpent, or go toe-to-toe with a Mirror Enforcer. Kind of helps you on 2 different fronts there, I guess.
Right, and I like the fact that you don't have to destroy an artifact to get the +1/+1 counter. So if they don't, if you're playing, I don't know, Slivers or something, and there is no artifact out, you can just buff your own creature.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a little pricey to do that, but it's not conditional.
Right, exactly. It's not like a total dud of a card if you wanted to play one in your main deck.
It should never be a dead card. I don't know if you'll main board it a whole lot, main deck it, but it should never be a dead card in hand.
Right, exactly. What did you have up first on your list?
Number 1 red card for me is also, I'm on the single pip cards tonight. Aki Warpaint for a single red. It's an enchantment aura, enchant artifact or creature. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it gets +2/+1. This is also something I thought about in that Champion of the Flame heroic deck. So basically this in a deck like that, putting it on that creature, it would read a single red, that creature gets +4/+3. That's huge. I like it. May go along with that Katana from earlier. But that's strictly about the only deck I'm even interested in playing it in, I think.
Yeah, this card was also on my list. I think it's pretty good. Even just its ability, like buff a random creature +2/+1 for 1 mana is nothing to scoff at. So
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, that's a good rate, as they say.
Up next on my list, I think it's another card that we both ended up having, was Experimental Synthesizer. Saw you post about this on Twitter and was immediately in love with everything it does.
Yep.
So for a singular red mana, it's an artifact. Whenever it ETBs or leaves the battlefield, you exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. And then for 3 mana, you can sacrifice it to create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance. You can only activate that ability as a sorcery. So you have, for 1 mana, you basically cantrip into the next card of your library to play. And then later on, for 3 mana, you make a 2/2 and do it again. And then, it also has the artifact synergies of, you can sack this to Deadly Dispute and then use other lands and the treasure to play the top card of your library.
There's so much going on here for a single red mana.
Exactly.
It's kind of insane. If I have to find a drawback, it's you only get until the end of the current turn to play the cards exiled with it, not the end of your next turn. But even that, I mean, it's still not a big enough downside for me not to play it.
Yeah.
Yep, I think this is like an instant cube card. It's maybe has an instant home, but I think that stuff like this can make decks right away for Deadly Disputes and just fill in the rest. That was my number 2, actually. So my number 3 is going to be Kami of Industry. It's 4 generic and a red for Creature Spirit. Looks like a big 4-armed gorilla, blacksmith type person thing. It's a 3/6, and when Kami of Industry enters the battlefield, return target artifact card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So you could, obviously you could do a vehicle. You could cast this, bring back a Wellspring, draw 2 cards.
I like this card. I think it's going to fit right at home as well in the Cascade type decks that play like Cleansing Wildfire and go a little bit slower. Maybe you
Sure.
can play a few more artifacts in those decks and kind of use this as something to cascade into. So you're cascading into this ETBs, you cascade into Wellspring, and then before you sacrifice Wellspring on instep, maybe you're playing Jund and then you Deadly Dispute that.
You're just flush with cards.
Yeah, and everybody's like, there's always this thing whenever I talk about this stuff, everybody always like says it's like fantastical in my mind, and maybe it is fantastical, but like a lot of times I find in Pauper, especially nowadays, decks just do their thing. Like
they generally do. It's crazy.
yeah, like how many times have you played against Affinity like in the past 2 weeks, and like in one of the 3 games they didn't literally go like turn 1 Blood Fountain, turn 2 Wellspring, turn 3 like Deadly Dispute the Wellspring like Thoughtcast or whatever, like
Yeah. That's just what it does now.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yep. What was I thinking too? Yeah, you could even play it in like if you wanted to stretch it, you could play in something like Tron, get back you can unearth a chromatic star or whatever, anything like that. Anything that cantrips, produces mana, cantrips, anything like that. I like it.
Yeah, so with that, I actually only had 4 red cards and we covered them all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you want to take my next one?
Yeah, so
My
what
number
Brad
4?
had up next is a Peerless Samurai. It's a 3 mana, red and 2 generic, for a 2/3 menace. Whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, the next spell you cast this turn costs 1 less to cast. Of note, Peerless Samurai is in fact a samurai.
I like it. We've had this sort of effect fairly recently, I think, Kaldheim or something like that. And I looked it up. Now I can't remember it for the life of me, but it wasn't quite as good as this one. But I do like this one a lot. Also, it triggers off warriors. Any sort of cost reduction is definitely worth at least testing out in my mind.
I agree. I could see a world where this card is potentially playable. I'm hoping that maybe like Warriors is actually a deck going forward.
I know. That would be great. I know Owlex, our buddy on Twitter, I think he's brewed up, it's been a year or 2 since I saw it, but he's brewed up a mono red Warriors list. And I think I tried it out on MTGO. I can't remember, but I think I may still have it built. So yeah, we'll have to definitely add more to it after Neon Dynasty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you had one more on your list if you want to take red home.
Sure, I do. I'll take it home with an Enchantment Saga, the Shattered States era, for 4 generic and a red. Chapter 1, you gain control of target creature until the end of turn. You untap it, it gains haste until the end of turn. Chapter 2, all creatures you control get +1/+0 until the end of turn. And then Chapter 3, just like the other sagas we have, you exile it, return it back to the battlefield, and it becomes a 3/3 trample haste human samurai enchantment creature thing. I don't think this is like a hugely powerful saga. It's probably not even at the top of the sagas we have, but I'm a fan of any sort of like wrangle or threaten effect. I like gaining control of creatures and sacrificing them and making my opponents cry. A little semi-anthem. I mean, it's actually an anthem, but it's not that super powerful. But I guess you could Bushwhacker on the same turn that you get Chapter 2. That's kind of strong.
Yeah, to me, that kind of feels awkward about the design of this card, I guess.
The second chapter?
Well, specifically that the second chapter, is the kind of effect that I would use to really swing combat, So it's like, this is the turn that I'm going to start attacking in and, try and get close to closing the game. And the third effect makes a 3/3 that has trample and haste to try and close the game, I guess.
Right, when you've already done a big swing.
Yeah, exactly. And there is something to be said, right, that maybe because you're playing smaller red creatures, right, you use the second chapter to attack and your opponent has to make some unfortunate blocks and just leave the board empty. And then, meow. And then you get a 3/3 that can start attacking through their stuff. But I don't know. It just feels like an awkward card to me, I guess, in reality, to play this in Pauper.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm not a huge fan of red X or mono red decks that want to go late in the game anyway. They typically aren't very good in Pauper. But yeah, it seemed fun. I like gaining control of creatures and doing what I want to with them.
Hey,
That's about all I had.
Yeah, there's no shame in having fun. And, again, just going back, any or all of the sagas could just be like game breaking, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess we can move on to the fifth and final color.
Yep.
Green.
Green. Number 1 on top of my list for green is Careful Cultivation. For 2 and a green, you get an enchantment aura. You can enchant artifact or creature. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it gets +1/+3, has reach, and it taps for 2 green mana. Or you can channel it for 1 and a green. You discard Careful Cultivation. Create a 1/1 human green monk creature token with tap, add green. That is a lot of words.
This was also number 1 on my list, and it would not have been, except somebody pointed out a nice combo in Pauper with it.
Yep.
This card actually goes infinite with a card called Pili Pala.
Oh, did you look it up?
Yeah, it's a 2-mana 1/1 artifact flying scarecrow that you pay 2 mana and untap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Mm-hmm. So, you can tap Pili Pala for 2 mana, use the 2 mana to untap it to make a, filter it into 1 mana of any color, and do that indefinitely to have infinite mana of any color.
Yep, and then you can do whatever the heck you want to, because you have all the mana.
Yeah. I also like the 2 mana make a dork ability on it. But really, for me, this is going to be, infinite mana combos or bust.
Yeah, pretty much. It's too expensive. It's too expensive for Boggles. Their 3-drop slots are already taken up with like Armadillo Cloak, Ancestral Mask. This is obviously nowhere near the power of those two. And really, what creature in Boggles do you want to tap for mana? Mm-hmm. You only want to tap it when you're killing people.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's cool. I think if you're some sort of enchantment tribal, I care about enchantments in my deck, this is probably pretty good. Yeah, I like the channel Make a Dork.
Up next, I'm not sure how good this card actually is, but we're gonna keep going with the theme of sagas. Tales of Master Sishiro. It's a 5-mana saga. The first 2 chapters put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or vehicle you control. It gains vigilance until end of turn. And the 3rd chapter flips it into a 5/5 with vigilance and haste.
That's a biggie.
Yeah. Hopefully there's a vehicles deck running around that can utilize this. I think the mana cost is not aggressive enough for this to really see play.
That 5 is quite a bit.
Yeah, it is.
But I think that is the biggest saga creature that we get, though.
It is, to my knowledge, at least.
Yeah. Second on my list is Commune with Spirits. For a single green, you get a sorcery. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an enchantment or land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This card was awesome for Tordex if that last sentence didn't exist. In a deck like that, you want it to go in your graveyard. Unfortunately, these go on the bottom of your library, but still, it's a very good effect. A single green to dig 4 deep. I think that's pretty solid. What do you think?
Somebody posted in one of the many different Pauper Discords, I forget who, Boggles Intensifies. I think that this card could be good for those decks.
I think so.
Just look at the top 4, grab an enchantment, slap it on your Boggle. It'll slow the decks down a little bit, but I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think it is too. If there's 2 things that Boggles always needs, it's lands and enchantments.
Right.
That's the 2 things they're always hurting for.
Yep, exactly.
So I think this is pretty good for them. I didn't think about that. I do like it there quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. Up next, I had a card I'm not sure how to feel about. Again, this might be just a symptom of the decks I've been playing. That's a pretty common theme
through this whole set.
Right. It's just me hedging my bets. I think me loving this card is a symptom of the decks I've been playing. It's Season of Renewal. So for 2 generic and a green, it's an instant. You choose one or both. You return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and you return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. This card reminds me of another card I like a lot called Pulse of Marasa. Like, you trade the life for the ability to get a second card.
Right.
It's very awkward that, it's not like two creatures or whatever. Like, it has to be a creature and an enchantment.
Yeah.
So, it kind of puts me off the decks that I immediately thought of for it. Were, again, just the green Cascade decks. But I'm kind of off those for it now. And wondering if maybe you can play like one or two of these in the Boggle sideboard for like the mono black matchup or something. Where,
Ooh,
not
I
only
like
do you
that.
get back your Boggle, but you also get your ethereal armor that you lost. Because, in those decks, it's kind of weird whenever you play against mono black. You don't want to commit your entire hand to the board on one creature at least. But you do
Right.
need to commit enough to make them pop an edict effect. So if you have two creatures and you have like Rancor on one and like +1/+1 enchantment on the other, they might not pop an edict yet. But as soon as you play the ethereal armor, they're immediately going to, play an edict. That way, you still have the creature with ethereal armor on it, but they're not attacking on two different fronts. Then maybe
Right.
they can work on popping another edict to remove that. And this just buys back your other Boggle.
Yeah. No, I hadn't even considered this card for that deck. I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot as a solid sideboard option.
Mhm.
I also enjoy it. Once again, it's green and it says the word graveyard on it, so I'm going to try it in Tordex. I think it's good. It probably like a one of or so in the sideboard when you know that you're going to go up against a deck with enchantment hate or what have you.
Mhm.
So I dig it. Yeah, my number 3 is the Heir of the Ancient Fang. For 2 and a green, you get a 2/3 Snake Samurai. Heir of the Ancient Fang enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it if you control a modified creature. Might be the first time we've seen that on a spoiler tonight. Any modified creature is a creature you control that has equipment, auras, and any sort of counter on them. They could be +1/+1, -1/-1, any of the weird counters from Ikoria, Menace, Death Touch, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's very intuitive, which is part of the reason that I like it, like the modified ability.
Yeah.
It's not like only equipment or modifications. It's like
only enchantments. Yeah.
yeah, it's like literally everything that changes creatures.
Yeah, is modified.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straight, and it fits the theme of the whole set really well, the body modifications and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So it's really cool. I don't think this is a super strong creature. I mean, if you get the counter, it's going to be a 3/4 for 3, which is a little bit above rate, but that's literally all you get.
Mhm.
It doesn't have like trample or can only be blocked by creatures power X or less or something like that.
Mhm.
But it's still solid. It's probably awesome and limited.
That being said, I think our next two are just the same. For me, my next one is Tamio Safekeeping. I'm very excited about this card for one deck and one deck only. I want to play Tamio Safekeeping, which is a green instant. It's just single green, target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. You gain 2 life. Infect, here we come. We're taking it to the moon, baby.
To the moon.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. A matchup whenever I was playing Infect that I ran into more than I thought I would and thought it was a really rough matchup was the blue-red Serpentine curve deck. It kind of plays like a counter burn strategy or even just actual burn or even like blue-red Fae is like a nice tempo deck where, this is going to interact with their bolts, their screds, any removal they have by giving your card hexproof and indestructible. But then, you also get that small life buffer. It's one of many options in those decks for protection. I'm not sure if it's going to be able to take the place of, say, like Vines of Vastwood, which you commonly play in the main deck.
Yeah.
But maybe as like a sideboard option for, just a little bit extra utility from your protection spells.
Yep. Do you like this better, the same, different than like a Snakeskin Veil?
I like it less than Snakeskin Veil because Snakeskin Veil buffs your creature.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like it different because this gains life.
Okay. That is quite fair.
Yeah, I wish it gained a bolt's worth of life instead of just 2.
Right.
But I also understand why it doesn't.
Right. So next would have been my number 5, but that is also Tamio Safekeeping. So what did you have last on your green list, mister?
Yeah. So what I had left was Coiling Stalker. It's a green and 1 for a 2/1 with Ninjutsu for a green and 1. Whenever Coiling Stalker deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control that doesn't have a +1/+1 counter on it. It's all coming together. I think
actually really like this.
yeah, I like it. Stompy. To me, an interaction that I like a lot is, you play Young Wolf, they remove Young Wolf. Young Wolf comes back, you attack. They don't block it. You ninjutsu it back, a hit, grow this guy, play your Young Wolf again. But also, I just think it's generically powerful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Where it's
It
gonna
doesn't
buff
necessarily need like a whole shell around it to work. It needs one other creature,
exactly.
and you got your value out of it.
Yeah, and there's already a nice home for it in mono green Stompy. It's not like this isn't the kind of ninjutsu card that has to create its own deck. It kind of reminds me of the blue one that we talked about, in that it already has a clear home that could use this effect.
Yeah, it was pretty cool listening to you read it. Sort of a little tangent here, but it is related. My physics teacher in high school used to offer to read us the questions on tests because he understood that some people comprehend like the spoken word better than reading it, if that makes sense. Like they understand the question better if they hear it as opposed to reading it. And that's exactly what happened with me with this card. I bet I've read this card the day it was spoiled, when I made the show notes, and then as we were doing the pre-show stuff, I read this card. So at least 3 or 4 times. And it took until you read it for me to understand that it is actually really good.
Yeah, I think it's deceptively good. That'll probably be after I try out fairies and stuff.
Yeah.
And feel disappointed by how good those decks are. I'll go to mono green and see what we can do with this card.
I like it. I would have to look. I don't know if we have any green ninja cards. Do we? Was this
Not
the
that
first
I
set
know
with
of.
green ninja? So that's pretty sweet. We got the Jade Avenger from Modern Horizons 2, but that's like a samurai or whatever. So we could have like ninjas and samurais and modern mono green.
Right. So I think that does it for green for us. I don't
Yes,
know.
sir.
I wasn't really excited by the artifacts in the set. I had put 2 on the list.
Yeah, I think your 2 are about my 2, and then I have one more that you did not put on there. So
I guess I'll start us off then. My first one was Network Terminal. 3 mana for an artifact. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Then you can pay 1 and tap it and another untapped artifact you control to draw a card and discard a card. This is far away from being Bonder's Ornament, but it's good.
it's
a
at
good
least a
hesitant.
fair Bonder's Ornament.
Yeah, I think this card's going to see some play in maybe like Tron decks that are trying to recreate Tron of old.
Yeah, the 5 color piles.
Yeah, and I think that's the main home that I see for it.
Yeah, I do too. Just as you were talking, I was trying to think of like, would Boros Monarch want something like this? Would Pestilence want something like this? And I can't see that happening, basically. There was another one. I'll let you talk about your second one here in a little bit. The Ninja's Kunai, I think that's how you say it. The artifact equipment for 1. This one's actually got a little bit of buzz going on. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I know that it has been popular just from hearing people talk. But it's an equipment. An equipped creature has 1 tap, sacrifice Ninja's Kunai, and Ninja's Kunai deals 3 damage to any target. And it equips for 1. So essentially for 3 mana, you're doing 3 points worth of damage. It's not great. It'll hit Guardian of the Guild Pact, I guess, because it is colorless. It's not a color. I just wanted to point it out because I know people were talking about it. We've had some effects like this in other sets recently that are twice as expensive for the same amount of damage. So yeah, if those Guardians are causing you fits, there you go. Hit them with the Kunai.
I think that this card could be good. I think it'll be good in the decks that don't have access to lightning bolt effects, which are less than you would think in Pauper, but they still exist in a fair number.
Yeah, and I think too, maybe this card is more important in a deck that cares about equipment and then just has that later game value of doing damage. Like, it's easy to cast, it's easy to equip, there's no problems there. if your deck just cares about having equipment like on Champion of the Flame or Goblin Gavelineer, or heck, if you wanted to, you could Deadly Dispute it. It's easy to cast, it's easy to manage, and then if it sticks around later on, you can do some damage with it.
And then I think the last artifact I had on my list, at least, was Searchlight Companion. 3 mana, you get a 1/1 flyer that whenever it ETBs, you create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. I don't think this card is very good, but I do see some brew.
I don't often brew with artifacts, but this is quite interesting.
Yeah, you flicker brew with the 5 mana monkey we were talking about. I forget its name. You can bring this guy back. The 2 mana bounce spell, will bounce it, turn it into a 2/2, have 2 other 1/1s. There's a lot you can do with this card, I think.
God damn, half that deck your Bruins coming out of this set.
That's always dangerous. We'll have to take that one to Arena, play Standard Pauper.
Yeah, hit us up on those historic and standard paupers. Let us know if this set creates an entire deck all on its own.
Right.
I did have one I wanted to add to the artifact review, the artifact list. I honestly have no idea why, but like the minute it was spoiled and the minute I saw it, I fell in love with it, and I'm still in love with it, and I can't not be in love with it. It's Thundersteel Colossus. For 7 generic mana, you get a 7/7 artifact vehicle with trample and haste, and it crews for 2. I just think it's awesome. I don't know why. I mean, you could like natural Tron, turn 3, drop it on the board. Turn 4, evoke a Mole Drifter. While the evoke triggers on the stack, you could crew this, draw your card, swing big, do all kinds of crap, and I love it. I love it. Or even just go straight, like Filigree Familiar on turn 2, and this on turn 3, and start swinging in for big.
That sounds like fun to me. You ever seen Evangelion?
Who, what?
Have you ever seen Evangelion? Oh, well, it's contentious as to whether or not I recommend Evangelion, but you should watch it just so you feel what I feel about this card.
Okay. I will. I'll have to write that down. Send me a message. Make sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a TV show, so it's a commitment.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, I just love it. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's it for Brown. There was one land. Neither one of us were really into it, but I'll just go ahead and say what it is. Uncharted Haven. Whenever it enters the battlefield tapped, you choose a color. Then you can tap it to add 1 mana of the chosen color. My issue with this is we have dual lands in Pauper that do the same thing. So it's like, why would you pick this land that can tap for 1 of any color when we have lands that are literally this, but they tap for 2 colors? Yeah.
Yep, we got the thriving lands, we got dual lands. Yep.
Exactly.
I mean, it's neat. I mean, I guess it can go in a PDH deck if you're looking for a singleton of something that adds a color, if you're running more than 2 colors or something crazy like that. But I don't even know if I like it for a cube, honestly.
I sort of feel the same way. Because at first my mind was like, oh man, this will be cool in a Pauper cube. Then I thought about it, and it's like a lot of the Pauper cubes that I've played, one of my favorite things is not knowing how well to value lands. So I kind of like having your dual lands restricted in a Pauper cube.
Yeah. Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
That wraps it up.
Yeah,
pretty good set review.
That's our Dog and Pony show. I'm very excited for this set.
One or two. Are you very excited? I was going to say in like 1 or 2 sentences, what do you think of the set?
I think there's a lot of power. I think it might be a little bit overblown how powerful it is, or at least I hope so. But I will say the best of the best cards in this set are like already on my watch list. Like,
yeah,
all right, this is what the Pauper format panel is for.
Yeah. I pretty much completely agree. I like the fact that this is probably the first standard set in a couple of years where a good majority of the commons are inspiring some brews. You know what I mean? They're inspiring some creativity. I can see some brews happening. Yeah, there's already a couple that already have homes in the format, but there's at least 2 or 3 out of each color that I want to try to make something different with, and I like that. It's got me excited for it.
Yeah, I agree. should be a good time. People are calling this set Pauper Masters. That's going to be the clickbait title for this episode. Yeah, but
Perfect.
yeah, that's what we think about all the cards. You can leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think. That's going to do it for this episode of Common Knowledge. If you wanted to get in touch with us, you can find me on Twitter at JustGuyDad. Brad, where can they find you?
At Pauper_B on Twitter or BradDrackV on MTGO.
Yeah, or if you don't deal with the public space stuff, you can shoot us an email over at commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com. If you have any questions on the Pauper format, MTGO, or anything else, again, you can email us, leave a comment down below. Thanks again to our sponsor, Pure MTGO, as well as the Constructive Criticism Network for letting us be a part of it. And last, certainly not least, thank you for listening. Take very good care of each other.
And never stop crewing those vehicles.